Hello, this is Bug News, and today we're going to talk about the magazine Essence and the TV series, or I guess mini documentary of titled Time of Essence on the OWN network. Um, Essence is an international magazine, I guess that's safe to say, to date. Started in I would say the like 1968, something like that. And it probably actually didn't publish till 1970, maybe, based on my notes here. But let's say 1968. Um, so I guess at this time, I mean, there were black magazines, but I guess there were no black magazines targeted to black women of that era. So, I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately, one, two, three, four, five, six black men. I'm looking at my notes here. Six black men created Essence magazine. Pimpin' Ain't Easy. Excuse me to all my feminists who may be listening in that aspect, probably. But anyway, so because this is Essence magazine, and six black men started it, and. But anyway, so names of those guys were Clarence O. Smith, Cecil Hollingsworth, Jonathan Blount, Dennis M. Clark, and Edward Lewis. Now, to be honest, I always thought Essence was founded by Gordon Parks, and then somewhere along the way, I thought it was Susan Taylor was the owner. She was just a worker. But as that magazine started, they had, of course, they had trouble coming up with money, and then they eventually came up with the money and launched the magazine. And mind you, that these probably were, I hate to use the word elite, but black men who at that time probably, who were probably came from certain families and things like that. I think one of the guys was pretty young, but he probably, father probably might have been a doctor and things like that. So he, they, in the right circles and at that time to kind of pull this off. Not to say that others did not do that. Then in addition to that, they were in New York City. So a big city background is a lot easier, kind of get a magazine pushing, even if it's local, because of the demographics. So I mean, New York probably was a big city, and if Ebony, that was in Chicago, so that was another major big city. And then you also have people from all over the country and all over the world in New York, so that also adds to some things. So a lot of people didn't know, magazines, and this is be a good business model and history lesson, to some it just be boring. But magazines in that time, print media in particular, print media, radio, TV, those were like cash cows if you were in media. Unlike, now they didn't catch the ball when internet came around and kind of had to reposition and things in that nature. So print media, if you could get a good structure, it was like a cash cow, because the advertising, if you break it down, I mean, you were like a social influencer of that time. You built up a subscription. I mean, print media and internet, and internet pretty much the same. A lot of people don't read that content. You have to have content. People like the content, so they subscribe and they pay money for the content. So you build up a subscription, you start to generate money, XYZ. So that's basically the same model. That's why you can kind of look at them, see how they started, how they got things done. So that's why what makes the Time Action documentary, an interesting series to watch. So we're going to move on to now is the power brokers of this Essence machine, because getting in something that has content, you bring in the actors and the whoever a celebrity is at that time, because they get that print media and they get even more exposure, which you may not get on other print media and just limited outlets other than radio, which at that time few radio stations, well, not gonna say few, but not that many were owned by. Actually, probably was even better, but not to say they weren't owned by black people, but it was more radio stations. It wasn't like radio is now. So you could actually have a radio career, and because there were so many radio stations, not owned by one or two companies or five companies, I should say today. So key component, as Essence was developing, they know they needed an editor. So Bernadette Carey officially was the first hired editor, through the influence of I guess she was also in the right circle. She was kind of sort of editor. So I guess for marketing you had to have somebody who might have a name to garner advertisers and things like that. But she wanted to share the company, so they wouldn't have an ad. They kicked her out, and I think she was also maybe Gordon Smart's choice. So I guess they came to the census and got somebody who had some skills. So they went to Ida E. Lewis. From my understanding, she was the actually no. Let me back up. Ruth Ross was the second person that they chose, and she's the one who kind of came up with the name Essence, but she didn't even stay very long herself, from my understanding, or maybe she fell to the background. So the official at this point, I guess it's like 1971, and Ida came into the fold, and this probably was a passion project for her because she was pretty much already established. I think she was an editor somewhere at another publication, and they recruited her to come over to Essence. Now, Essence wasn't paying people probably the best of salaries at that time, and they were still kind of structuring and bringing people in during those first couple of years. So Ida stayed. I just stayed for 2 years, maybe 3 years, and then she was out. I think one of the reasons that she left, well, although during Ida time, it was a power struggle going on, and which I think came on later on when they got profitable, but it was a power struggle going on. So a couple of the guys got kicked out or was asked to leave by the majority owners who had stock, because they had stock in the company. So the other ones asked to leave or fall back. But I don't think they sold their stock. They were just asked to leave. So that happened. So during that time, Ida fired Marcia and Gillett. I'm pronouncing that wrong, but fired her, who herself was an editor, and I think she may have been managing editor. But Ida and Marcia knew they had some issues, and Ida knew that Marcia wanted her job. So here you have, like somebody, and Ida and Marcia was only 26 at the time, and Ida, let's put her at like 35 or maybe a little older. She knew she wanted a job, so eventually, I guess something came to a head, and Ida fired her. And then Edward came back and fired Ida, and he knew that would be some type of problem for the magazine, because I guess of Ida's reputation. And remember, you're the editor of a magazine like this, and you're influencing people at the time. Like I said, it's just magazines were powerful influencers. Even if you had a little small magazine, and let's say you were local and you had like 2,000 people buying it and reading it, that still can be a great influence, because we know that a lot of black newspapers that were in small areas had that type of influence. So just imagine you got 300,000 or a million people subscriptions around the world, or around the country at least, and you're in all these different households. So Ida, and then her background, and also networking with other political figures, that's something to say. So, and as we know, the editors of some of these magazines, especially Essence, Um, in one particular, lived a rock star, allegedly lived a rock star lifestyle, and had a cult following. So she was gone 3 years, so she really had time to build up that kind of like cult following. So then Marcia came from 71 to 80, so she had time to do things, and she some may have considered a micromanager. She said she was a little harsh on people in that aspect, and then eventually she was let go. Then for a short period, they had a Daryl Royster, and so the editor, has to bring the money in, and they said, subscriptions were falling, this, that, but Royster was saying that she didn't get along with Ed. So then we have Susan Taylor, the goat of Essence. So, and maybe it was just perfect timing, but Susan Taylor, how she got into Essence was Ida hired her as the freelance fashion, editor. And Susan, mind you, remember she didn't have an educational background, which, what I mean by educational background, she didn't graduate from college, but I'm pretty sure she had brought some other things to the table, and I guess probably what she was. She probably was a good communicator of what she wanted to do, because mind you, this is a magazine, so you just can't go in there and say, hey, I know how to do fashion, this, because of that. You have to be a communicator, and communicate your ideas, and I guess her ideas came across in the magazine. And in addition to that, she was young at that time. Magazine was young. Most of the people were younger people, and they were attracting the younger audience of that time. So, so Susan Taylor, as allegedly has, a cult following for many reasons, and that she was put on the face on a lot of things. Her image was used in a lot of things. For example, I think during their time, Essence had a TV show. They had Essence Awards. They had, they had Essence Music Festival. All right. So now during this time, this is when it was at the peak, a power struggle emerged. So a couple of the guys, they came back, tried to sue Essence, and they came back also with a investment banker. And what the strategy was to gain control of the company by getting majority stock. So Essence couldn't pay people what the market was paying at that time, so they gave people stock. And they were the takeover people were trying to take over by buying up the stock from the employees who had worked there in the past or currently work there, and almost did it. But I think Clarence Smith had like enough stock to fight them off, and that's why you probably had Clarence Smith and Edward Lewis still in charge today. So maybe they raised the money to buy even more stock or buy the other people out, or the other people just fell back and took profit. But at that time, Essence was like 1 million subscribers. So we're going to go into some of the magazine business. So there was 1 million, and which they don't go into. They talk over it in the series, but they had like 1 million subscribers. Great. I got a phone call now. They had like 1 million subscribers. And in addition to that, which is pretty good for that time, and they had all these other things, so they were profitable. I don't think they had Essence Music Festival at the time, but they were profitable. They had Essence Fashion Fair. So Ebony had Ebony Fashion Fair. They had different things, makeup and things like that, which it was making. So they were profitable. So the guys came back and tried to take, but the magazine industry itself is how you get charge your ad rate is based off your subscription. It's not based off the sales you sell on a news rack. So unfortunately, a lot of people think that, because what happens is the reason why they think that is because the publications for the news rack is put out first, right? Your subscriptions come about 2 weeks later. You would think it would be opposite, but that's the way it is. All right. So you go to the advertiser and say, "Hey, I got these." Anyway, the news rack doesn't even it generates money, but it doesn't generate as much money as the subscription base is. So that's why I say it's just like internet. I got 1 million subscribers. So a lot of these micro influencers really don't know the business. So micro influencers, like you micro influencer 10 to 50,000. You can leverage that in other areas besides the platform that you're on now. If your platform goes away, maybe like Instagram or other, then you will have an issue, because you lost subscribe, especially if you didn't connect with them in a different way. So long story short, when Essence has many subscribers, they can go to and charge a certain ad rate, because that's how it works, in that aspect. So right now, Essence, as we know, they have Essence Music Festival, other brands, and things like that. But don't get it mixed up. Besides these little inner squabbles of editors' leaving, there's also a sex scandal that occurred, ironically. Let's say during the 80s, well documented, I think. Whereas one of the senior management was coming into one of the editors, and basically told them this is how they moved up. So it was addressed. The lady ended up leaving and going to a different publication, or still around, I guess, in the magazine business, because once you learn that skill, you can take it elsewhere. Ironically, a lot of people, I guess 2000-ish, that came in Essence, they went off and formed their own magazines, such as I think Vibe, maybe Honey, I'm not sure. But what it was is those magazines were targeting a younger audience, while Essence was annoying hip hop. So we're going to keep a close eye on this documentary and see how it plays out, and see people's comments about it. This is Bug News. Please like, share, and subscribe, and thank you very much.